Welcome back to this particular series, part 3. We're exploring aroma point and key essential oils for children who are having trouble staying asleep or falling asleep, and also with night terrors. Oh, and I just remembered that in part 2, where I talked about rose and the power of rose with 2 key points, I forgot to mention this, so I'm mentioning it now in part 3, which is that that in my clinical experience, rose on those points has been the most effective consistently for treating night terrors. So I'll generally recommend actually that the parent or guardian go through the process of Roman chamomile on CV8, which we covered in part 1, rose here. And then if you wanted to, those are the 2 that I'll do most for night terrors, but you could also add this third element and be super complete if you want. This third element has to do with sleeplessness or trouble falling asleep because of excess yang energy that rises up to the mind at night. So most of the time this happens with adults because as we grow and as we age, the yin of substance of the body diminishes. And the yin and the yang are in a reciprocal dynamic balancing relationship with each other. So as the yin, which is the cooling substance of the body, diminishes, the yang can tend to flare up at night when normally the yin would kind of pull it down into cooling the mind. The mind's not active. Now with children, what I see is that, and you know, this is complex and multifaceted, so I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but there won't be any of the essentials that'll be lost through this that are important. With children in modern times, I notice a couple of things. One is that foundationally, their nervous systems are actually developing differently than at least mine. I'm 47 years on the planet. I didn't grow up with Wi-Fi around me. I didn't grow up with cellular wave forms around me. And I've studied with some great Chinese masters and mentors that are extraordinary at pulse reading. I studied a lineage called the Leon Hammer pulse system, and I studied it through a teacher, Lonnie Jarrett, who he can sit with a person's pulses for 20 to 40 minutes and say pretty much, maybe not everything that's going on in their body, but really a lot, down to a T of physiological things going on in their body. And Leon Hammer had written that, and this piece was actually written maybe, I want to say 15 years ago now, so it's even more relevant, that he was beginning to see that more and more young people were coming in with a certain quality on the pulse that he only used to see on elderly people. And this quality on the pulse is reflective of a kind of drying quality at the level of the nervous system. Again, I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but so you can kind of feel what I'm talking about. So here our children they grew up with Wi-Fi probably in most of the houses. They grew up around cell phones, just like we're around cell phones all the time. And there is an impact of those waveforms on developing nervous systems. So those waveforms they do impact our nervous systems as well, but less so, and there's more resiliency. But if a child is around those waveforms from very young as they're developing, the point of all this is that their nervous system is developing in a different way. And I wouldn't even necessarily classify it as bad, bad or wrong. It's just, it is markedly different. And it requires different kind of attentiveness and different kinds of treatment responses when we're looking at treating. So back to this thing about yang energy rising up in the child, where we didn't used to necessarily see this in children, we would only see it in adults. Because children have now, again, I'm going to call it drier nervous systems, they can be more high-strung. We see more diagnoses of ADD and ADHD, and that's also a complex subject that we won't get into. But this sort of dry freneticism in the nervous system of children that we see more frequently, it needs something. It needs a cohesive, moistening energy as like a remedy to what's going on with it. Additionally, I just want to add one more thing about children and this sort of freneticism that can come. Children are already very active and very young during the day, so they have a lot of that comes up. If there is tension in the household, if there's a lot of activity, if there's upheaval or uprooting, that can add on top of this sort of dryness, and they're already their already existing tendency to have more energy, and then it can sort of tip it over the edge where it's almost like an agitation in the evening, and that's why they can't get to sleep. So you might notice this as like a hyperactivity, a restlessness, wanting to talk a lot. You just want to calm them down, right? Calm them down. This is a good indicator for this point in oil remedy right now. So this oil that I'm going to recommend is Siam wood. And Siam wood, this is Monara, monara.org, M-O-N-A-R-A. The link is in the description. I love Monara oils. It's a business that my husband and I started together as we were doing our travels, and we started to import really beautiful oils that we would come across when we were traveling from small to medium-sized producers. And we created a kids kit called the Blue Dolphin Kids Kit. This is the label. And it has 12 of the most used essential oils for children in it. I highly recommend it. And the thing is, they're all properly diluted, so you're being safe with your children, but you can also use them on you, and they work great for you too. So it's a kit for kids, but a kit for you too. The main sweet woody oil that I found to be most effective with children is called Siam wood, S-I-A-M wood. It comes from Vietnam primarily, and wait till you get it and smell it. It has a little bit of a fragrance like bananas, strangely. And I find that the oils that tend to do best with children are the ones that are connected to food fragrances, if even just not like this isn't an actual food, but it has the essence of a food fragrance in it. So the sweet woody oils, if you don't have Siam wood and you want to use what you've got, what I'd suggest is either diluted sandalwood or diluted cedar wood. Both of those would serve this function well. The sweet woody oils consolidate energy into the core of the body. And the sweet part, so the consolidating of energy is grounding and centering. It's really pulling their energy in. And then the sweet aspect of the fragrance, which you'll have in the Siam wood, you'll have in cedar wood, you'll have in sandalwood, that is very harmonizing to the child. It's calming and harmonizing. It's like singing a child a sweet lullaby while your hand's on their belly. And in fact, if you want to use the oil on their belly while you're singing a sweet lullaby, that could be incredible. Now, where's the point that you're going to put this? The point that I want you to put this on for the purposes that we're talking about is called CV6, conception vessel 6. And it's about 1.5 inches below the belly button. I'm going to see if I can show it to you very easily. Okay, there's my belly button, 1.5 inches below it, right there. So you'll find that on your child, and take a drop of diluted oil and place it right over there. And it's a very light touch. You're not poking down into their skin. And you're going to hold it there for, again, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. My nickname for Siam wood is the softening stabilizer. So it softens them into themselves, and it centers them into their core, and it harmonizes. It's a sweet harmonizer. It collects these sort of frayed edges of frenetic energy. In closing, I'll say that you can absolutely do what I covered in part 1, part 2, and part 3 all together as a nightly ritual, and that could be very powerful. Or if there's just one in particular, whether it was the rose or the Roman chamomile or this one that really speaks to you specifically for your child or the child you're treating, then go with that. You can start. It's not like more is better when it comes to aroma point therapy. fact, in some ways, it's the opposite. Okay, lastly, in closing, rather than making a whole other video, I do want to share this tidbit of information with you. There was a period of time where I was treating a really sweet Mormon family that was quite large, and the youngest of the children was 2, and they went all the way up at that time to, I think, 11. And I was treating like 4 or 5 of the children in the group room at my clinic all at one time. And I think 4, if we say it was many, many years ago, but say if I was treating 4 of the children, 3 of the 4 had hyperactivity or there was another diagnosis that had to do with having heightened sensation, and for some reason the name's not coming to me right now. So my logic at the time was, what I need to do is I just need to get the hyperest of these kids, who he was in fact like bouncing off the walls, literally. I need to get the hyperest of these kids, and I just need to root his energy down. And then once I root his energy down, everybody else will start calming down, because they were kind of reacting to his intensity. And I thought, to do that, I'll use a rooty oil, something like vetiver, to sink the energy straight down. It was good logic. But the thing is, the yang energy that rises up in children is so strong that I was trying to like wrestle their yang energy down to the earth through this vetiver. And it was actually through a happy accident, which is, I'm convinced, how most really cool inventions happen, or discoveries happen, was that I ended up, by accident, I meant to get the vetiver, and I got some kind of a sweet lemony oil. I think it was Mei Chong or perhaps bergamot. And when I put that oil on them, and I think I did it here. I was thinking I was going to do vetiver, grounding, I was going to do it here and then on their feet. But I ended up using this citrus oil, kind of bright citrus, lemony smelling oil. And all of a sudden, this hyperactive energy in this child, and by the way, I used to not only be able to like hold the oil on the point for like 3 seconds before he was moving, he wasn't moving right away. I noticed as I was putting the oil on that this wasn't what I had planned to put because I could smell it, but I went with it because I was already noticing that something was different, because I had tried this vetiver tactic before and it didn't work, but I kept thinking it's gonna work because in theory it should work. So I'm holding it and he's letting me touch for longer and longer and longer. And what happened energetically is that lemony fragrance took the chi, all this frenetic energy that was up around his upper body, and just dispersed it out. It dispersed it. So rather than trying to wrestle it down, I dispersed it out. And then from there, I could go into centering him or grounding him. Highly effective. So the reason why I share this is because if your child or the child that you're treating has a lot of frenetic energy at night, like they're getting into bed with all of this intensity, you might think about using sweet orange, which is in the Blue Dolphin kit, or diluted bergamot, or diluted grapefruit, or diluted Mei Chong, which is Litsea. And you can use it here, or you can use it behind their ears, right behind the lobe, to disperse that hyperactivity or that intense energy that's rising up. And then from there, you can go to do the Siam wood on CV6. Got it? Okay, if you enjoyed this, do like the video, subscribe, and then share it with others. It's great to spread this word. It's just fantastic. Okay, from my heart to yours, and until next time.